The cafeteria buzzed with laughter until a single sharp slap cut through the noise. A tray crashed to the floor. Silence followed. Every eye turned toward the small girl standing by the vending machine, her cheek red, her hands trembling. "Did you just touch me?" One of the bullies sneered, her voice dripping with fake innocence. The tallest one, Marcus, leaned closer, grinning. "What you gonna do now, huh? Cry?" She didn't. She just stared at them, quiet, calm, almost cold. A teacher looked up from across the room and looked away just as quickly. No one wanted to get involved. Then, from somewhere outside, the faint rumble of engines echoed. Several black cars pulled up near the school gates. The bullies didn't notice, but one lunch lady froze mid-step, eyes wide. The girl slowly picked up her fallen tray. "You shouldn't have done that," she whispered. Marcus laughed. "Or what?" The girl looked up, voice low and steady. "My father's coming." And in that instant, no one in that cafeteria had any idea what those words truly meant. Her name was Aaliyah Moore. A quiet 16-year-old junior at Jefferson High, a school where reputation mattered more than kindness. Every hallway had its hierarchy: athletes at the top, rich kids in the middle, everyone else scattered below, invisible. Aaliyah lived somewhere near the bottom. She wasn't loud, she didn't chase attention, and she dressed simple: jeans, sneakers, hoodies that always looked one size too big. Her dark curls were usually tied back, her eyes sharp but tired, as if she carried more weight than most people her age. She never talked about her family. Whenever someone asked where her father worked, she'd shrug and say, "He travels a lot." And that was it. To most kids, she was the quiet girl from the South Side. To a small, cruel few, that was enough reason to pick on her. Every lunch period, Aaliyah sat at the same table, near the window, headphones in, sketchbook open. She loved to draw. Faces, mostly. Sometimes she'd draw people she saw at school, sometimes just fragments of memories: a man's hand covered in rings, a silhouette beside a black car, a little girl holding that hand while cameras flashed. She never showed those drawings to anyone. The bullies Marcus, Tessa, and Brianna noticed her silence and took it for weakness. They'd whisper when she walked by, trip her in the halls, and laugh when she fell. Teachers saw it, but said nothing. "Don't make trouble," one had warned her once. "Some people just like to push buttons." So she stopped expecting help. Outside of school, her world was different. Her neighborhood wasn't rich. Their house stood out, a large brick home with tinted windows and cameras at every corner. Men in black suits were always nearby, though they never said much. When she came home, they'd nod respectfully. "Evening, Miss Aaliyah." Inside, the house was quiet. Always quiet. Her father, Don Marcus Moore, was rarely there during the day. When he was, he'd sit in his office, door closed, phone glued to his ear, voice calm but commanding. Aaliyah wasn't supposed to interrupt. But sometimes when he hung up, he'd smile and pull her in for a hug. "You doing okay in school?" he'd ask. She'd nod, forcing a smile. "Yeah, Dad, all good." He'd study her for a moment, as if he could see right through the lie. Then he'd kiss her forehead. "Remember what I taught you. Never let them see fear. You come from strength." Strength. That was his word. But at school, strength didn't mean much. It didn't stop the laughter. It didn't stop Marcus and his friends from cornering her near the lockers, mocking her clothes, her hair, her silence. One Friday, she found a note on her desk. "Stay in your lane, cafeteria girl." It was signed with a lipstick mark. She crumpled it, threw it away, and said nothing. That weekend her father came home late, as usual, smelling faintly of cigar smoke and cologne. She waited until he'd sat down before asking, "Dad, what kind of work do you do?" He smiled. Not kindly, more like a man who'd lived long enough to know certain answers were dangerous. "The kind that keeps us safe," he said. "You don't need to worry about that. But people at school ask, then tell them it's none of their business." His voice hardened. Then, softening, he added, "People fear what they don't understand, baby girl. Let them wonder." She nodded, but the question stayed with her. What did her father really do? Why did strange men visit the house at night? Why did she sometimes wake up to the sound of car doors slamming and voices murmuring outside? Still, she never asked again. Monday morning came, and with it, another cafeteria lunch. She sat at her usual spot, pulling out her sketchbook. Across the room, Marcus and his friends were laughing, their voices loud enough to drown out the hum of chatter. Aaliyah tried to ignore them, until Tessa's voice cut through. Look, she's drawing again. Probably sketching her imaginary friends, they laughed. Aaliyah didn't look up. Marcus stood, grabbing his tray. Let's go say hi, Brianna giggled. Oh, this'll be fun. Aaliyah felt the air change around her. She closed her notebook slowly, her heart beating faster, but her face stayed calm, just like her father had taught her. Because deep down, something inside her whispered that one day they'd regret it. They just didn't know how soon that day would come. The next few weeks at Jefferson High blurred into a slow-motion nightmare. What began as whispers behind Alia's back had evolved into full-blown harassment. Marcus and his crew had found their favorite target, and Alia quiet, reserved. Unwilling to fight back was an easy mark. Marcus was the kind of boy everyone seemed to admire for all the wrong reasons. Star basketball player, son of a city councilman, confident to the point of cruelty. He walked like the school belonged to him. His laugh carried through the halls, loud and hollow. He liked to be seen, liked to be heard, liked to win. Then there was Tessa. His girlfriend, all fake smiles and venomous words, perfect hair, expensive perfume, always surrounded by girls desperate to be her. And Brianna, the sidekick, the one who laughed too hard at everything Marcus said just to stay in his circle. Together they were a trio of arrogance wrapped in designer clothes stowed to them. Aaliyah was invisible until the day Marcus decided she wasn't. It started small. As cruelty often does, Aaliyah was at her locker, headphones in, humming softly to an old R&B song. When a sudden slam made her flinch, her locker door rattled shut. Marcus stood there, grinning. Double quotes, yo, sketch girl, he said, leaning on the locker next to hers. You always drawing, or what? She removed one earbud. Excuse me? Tessa appeared beside him, smirking. He said, do you ever talk? Or are you one of those creepy, quiet girls who just watches people? Aaliyah calmly reopened her locker. I mind my business. You should too. That made Marcus laugh. Oh, she's got a mouth. Didn't expect that. Leave her alone, Marcus, said a voice from down the hall. Jordan, one of his teammates. But Marcus waved him off. Chill, man. We're just having fun. He reached for Alia's sketchbook, lying on the top shelf. She grabbed it before he could. Don't touch that, she said quietly. His grin widened. Relax. I just want to see what kind of freaky stuff you draw. He tugged. She held on, and for a second, it was a silent tug-of-war. Then he let go suddenly, making her stumble back. The book fell, pages fluttering open, drawings scattered across the floor, faces shadows, a man in a sharp suit, a hand covered in rings. Marcus picked one up. Yo, what's this? Your sugar daddy. The hallway filled with laughter. Aaliyah snatched the page from his hand, eyes burning, but she didn't speak. She gathered her papers and walked away, chin high. While the sound of their laughter followed her down the corridor, that was the first time she'd walked away. It wouldn't be the last. 2 days later, during history class, the teacher stepped out for a moment. That's when Tessa made her move. Hey, Aaliyah, she said sweetly, loud enough for everyone to hear. You're like super quiet. Do you ever go out? Or are you one of those church girls who never have fun? Aaliyah kept her eyes on her notebook. I study. You should try it. The class snickered. Tessa's smile faltered for a moment, then returned sharper. Oh, you got jokes now? Tell me something your dad ever show up to parent night. Or is he too busy doing whatever it is he does? Aaliyah froze. Marcus leaned back in his chair. I heard he's some kind of driver or something. You know, one of those guys who takes care of business, he made air quotes. Probably cleans cars or whatever. Tessa laughed. Yeah, explains the attitude. Guess power runs in the family. If wiping windows counts as power. That broke the room. The laughter stung more than the words. Aaliyah looked up, her gaze cutting through the noise. At least my father's not the reason half the school pretends to like me. The laughter died instantly. Marcus's smile vanished. He leaned forward slowly, eyes narrowing. "Careful what you say, sketch girl," the teacher returned. And the moment ended, but something dark lingered between them. From that day on, Marcus wasn't just teasing her. He was hunting her. It happened on a rainy Thursday. The sky outside was gray, thunder murmuring in the distance. Inside the cafeteria, the air was thick with chatter and the smell of pizza and bleach. Aaliyah sat alone. As usual, her tray untouched. Her sketchbook was open, pencil gliding across the page. She was drawing the reflection of the storm in the window-dark clouds. Streaks of silver light. Marcus and his crew entered, laughing, tossing food at each other. They spotted her instantly. "Hey, there's our little artist," Tessa said, sliding her tray onto Alia's table. "What's your drawing today? Another sad face?" Aaliyah didn't answer. Brianna giggled. "Maybe she's drawing Marcus again. You know, she's got a crush." Marcus leaned down, his shadow falling over her page. "You like me, Aaliyah?" he asked, voice low. "Is that why you keep sketching me?" Aaliyah closed her sketchbook. "Move." He didn't. He placed his hand on the book, pressing it to the table. "You know, it's rude to ignore people when they're talking to you." She met his eyes. Cold. "You wouldn't understand respect if it hit you." A few kids nearby gasped quietly. Marcus's jaw tightened. Tessa whispered, "Don't let her talk to you like that." Marcus smirked, but his eyes burned. "You know what? Maybe you need a lesson." Before anyone could react, he slapped the tray from her hands. Food splattered across her shirt. Laughter erupted. Aaliyah stood still, breathing hard. The noise of the cafeteria seemed to fade. All she could hear was her heartbeat and her father's voice. Years ago, never let them see fear. She bent down, picked up the tray, wiped her hands on a napkin. Marcus chuckled. "Yeah, that's right. Clean it up." Then it happened. He said something else, something cruel, too low for anyone else to catch, and as Aaliyah straightened, her hand brushed his arm. Marcus recoiled dramatically. "Yo, Dante, touch me." He shoved her shoulder hard enough to make her stumble. The slap came next, not from him, not yet, but from Tessa. A sharp, open-handed strike that echoed across the cafeteria. Everyone froze. Aaliyah didn't move. Her cheek burned, her eyes watered, but she stood tall. The silence stretched until it felt heavy, and then she said it, softly but clearly. "You shouldn't have done that." A ripple of nervous laughter broke out, but a few students shifted uncomfortably. The lunch lady by the counter paused mid-step, eyes darting toward the window. Outside, faint engine sounds grew louder. Marcus rolled his shoulders, still smirking. "Or what? You gonna draw us to death?" Aaliyah looked at him for a long moment. Then, with a calmness that made everyone uneasy, she whispered, "My father's coming." Marcus laughed, turning to his friends. "Yo, did you hear that? Daddy's coming to save her?" But in the back of the room, someone near the window gasped. "Hey, are those black cars pulling up?" Marcus turned, confused. Outside the cafeteria, 3 sleek black sedans rolled to a stop by the school gates. Men in suits stepped out, scanning the building like security detail. The laughter died. The bullies exchanged uncertain glances. Aaliyah slowly lifted her tray and walked toward the exit, past them, her voice steady as stone. "I told you," she said. "You shouldn't have done that." No one spoke as she disappeared through the doors. Only the sound of engines idling outside broke the silence. And for the first time, Marcus didn't feel like the one in control. The cafeteria had never been so silent. Even after Aaliyah walked out, no one dared to move. All eyes stayed on the window where the black cars had stopped. Engines humming like an omen. Marcus tried to laugh, but his voice cracked. "Relax. It's probably some parents' meeting or something." Tessa frowned. "At lunchtime?" Brianna whispered, "Why do they look like bodyguards?" The men outside wore tailored suits, each one with an earpiece glinting under the overcast light. One spoke into a radio, another scanned the entrance with cold precision. It wasn't just the cars, it was the way they moved. Coordinated, efficient, dangerous. The lunch lady crossed herself quietly. By the next morning, the entire school was buzzing. Did you hear? Some men came to pick up that quiet girl yesterday. I heard they were FBI or something. No, bro, I heard her dad runs some kind of business. Like Mafia business. Whispers spread faster than wildfire. The story changed with every retelling. Some said her dad was a politician. Others swore he was a gangster. One rumor claimed that the principal had been called into a private meeting after the cars arrived and came out pale as chalk. Aaliyah said nothing. She walked the halls as if nothing had happened, headphones on, face unreadable. But people noticed the change. Where students once ignored her, they now stepped aside. Even the teachers spoke to her with a little more caution, her voices polite but nervous. Marcus, however, couldn't let it go. He cornered her at her locker again, though his swagger had dimmed. So what was that yesterday, huh? You call your daddy to come pick you up like a princess? Aaliyah shut her locker calmly. Maybe I did. Who is he really? Marcus pressed. Everyone's saying stuff. She met his gaze, eyes steady. Let them talk. Then she turned and walked away, leaving him standing there, jaw tight with confusion and something new. Fear. That evening, Aaliyah sat in her room sketching again. The storm from yesterday had cleared, but the air still carried a kind of heaviness, like the world was holding its breath. Downstairs, she could hear muffled voices, men talking in low tones, the clink of glasses. Her father's calm but commanding voice. She closed her sketchbook, curiosity gnawing at her. Quietly, she crept down the hall and stopped by the staircase. From the shadows, she could see her father seated at the dining table with 3 men she didn't recognize. All wore black suits, expressions carved from stone. They touched her, one of them said, his tone sharp. In public, her father's hand rested on the table, still as a statue. At a school, he said quietly. In front of everyone? Yes, sir. A long pause. Then the faint sound of knuckles tapping wood. A slow, deliberate rhythm. Find out who Don Marcus Moore said finally. But do nothing until I say so. Yes, sir. The men nodded and left, silent as shadows. Aaliyah stayed hidden until they were gone. When her father finally looked toward the staircase, his voice softened. You can come out now, Aaliyah. She stepped down slowly, caught. You knew I was there? He smiled faintly. I always know when my daughter's near. She hesitated, then asked, who were those men? Associates, he said simply. They help me manage. Business. What kind of business? He looked at her for a long time, then gestured for her to sit. There are things in this world, Aaliyah, that don't fit neatly into right or wrong. Sometimes, to protect what you love, you have to stand in the dark. Shh. You mean, like illegal stuff? He chuckled softly. Illegal is a word the powerful use when something isn't theirs. He leaned closer. What matters is control, respect, family. She studied his face, the calm eyes, the faint scar above his temple, the quiet gravity in his tone. People at school. They think you're dangerous. His gaze didn't waver. Do you think I am? She shook her head. No, you're just you. He smiled, but there was sadness behind it. One day, you'll understand that power isn't about fear. It's about how far you'll go to protect peace. Then his voice grew gentle. Tell me what happened yesterday. She tried to play it down, but he saw through every word. When she got to the part about the slap, his hand clenched around his glass. Did anyone help you? She shook her head. His jaw tightened. Of course not. He took a slow breath, mastering the anger in his eyes. You did well, Aaliyah. You didn't fight. You stayed calm. That's strength. But I wanted to hit her back, she admitted. He nodded. That's natural. But listen to me carefully. He leaned forward, eyes locked on hers. Never reveal your power to small minds. Let them laugh. Let them think they've won. Because when the time comes, The truth will break them without you lifting a hand. She memorized every word that night. As she lay in bed, memories surfaced, fragmented flashes from years ago. She was 8. Standing in the driveway of their old home, watching her father talk to a group of men beside 2 black cars. One of them shouted, angry. Her father didn't raise his voice. He simply looked at the man and said, "You have one more chance to choose respect." The man didn't take it. Minutes later, he was escorted into one of the cars and driven away. Aaliyah didn't see him again. Later that night, her father had sat her on his lap and said, "People mistake kindness for weakness. Never make that mistake, baby girl. There's strength in silence. Power in patience." He'd shown her the gold ring on his finger, engraved with a crest she didn't recognize. "This family doesn't start wars," he said, "but we end them if we must." Now, years later, those words echoed like thunder in her mind. At school, the atmosphere changed completely. The bullies avoided her. When Marcus passed her in the hallway, he didn't make eye contact. Even teachers seemed uncertain. Their smiles forced, but rumors continued to swirl. "Her dad's got connections. I heard he owns half the nightclubs downtown. My cousin works at a hotel. Saw him there once with security guards." Each story made Aaliyah feel both safer and lonelier. No one spoke to her anymore, out of hate but out of fear. Even Jordan, the only classmate who'd once stood up for her, kept his distance. It was a strange kind of power, and she didn't like it. During lunch one day, as she sat alone sketching again, Marcus approached, hesitant this time. No laughter, no entourage. He cleared his throat. "Hey, Aaliyah." She looked up, expression unreadable. "What?" He glanced around, lowering his voice. "Listen, about the other day. Things got out of hand." "Tessa, she's scared?" She interrupted. He hesitated. "Yeah, we didn't know, okay? We didn't know who your dad was." Leah tilted her head slightly. "And if he wasn't who you think he is, would you still be sorry?" He looked away. Look, just tell him we didn't mean anything by it, all right? I'm just trying to stay cool with everyone." She smiled faintly. "That's the problem, Marcus. You care too much about being cool." He frowned. But before he could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it and froze. His face drained of color. "What is it?" Aaliyah asked softly. Marcus swallowed. "Someone sent me a picture of my dad's car, parked outside his office," her brow furrowed. "So?" Marcus looked at her like he'd just seen a ghost. "No one knows where his office is." "No one." She didn't reply. Josh stared, and then said quietly, "My father doesn't make threats, Marcus. He makes statements." She gathered her things and walked out. By the end of the week, the tension reached the faculty. The principal, a nervous man named Mr. Langford, called Aaliyah to his office. She sat across from him, calm as ever. He cleared his throat. "Aaliyah, I wanted to discuss the recent incidents. There seems to be a lot of attention around you lately because I got slapped," she asked evenly. He coughed. "Well, yes, but there are also outside parties who've expressed interest in how the school handled it." Her eyes narrowed. "Outside parties?" He fumbled with his tie. "Your father, specifically? He huckled this morning. Very polite man, but..." He swallowed hard. "He wanted to ensure that you feel safe here." Aaliyah smiled slightly. "That's nice of him." Mr. Langford nodded too quickly. Yes, of course. And we're taking disciplinary action against the students involved. I've already spoken to their parents." She stood. "Thank you." She turned to leave. He called after her. "Aaliyah." "Yes, your father. He's quite an influential man, isn't he?" She paused at the door. "He's a father who loves his daughter. That's all." Then she left him sitting there, sweating. Friday came again. A week since the slap, the sky was heavy with clouds, mirroring the unease that hung over the school. Classes passed in tense silence. No one dared whisper. Even Marcus kept his head down then, just before the final bell. The intercom crackled. "Students, please remain in your classrooms for a brief announcement." Everyone looked up. The voice wasn't the principal's, it was deeper, smoother, authoritative. "This is Don Marcus Moore," it said. "Some of you know my daughter Olea. She has endured cruelty and silence in this building. That ends today. Jefferson High will be a place of respect, or it will be a place of consequences." The room fell deathly silent. Marcus's hands shook. Tessa stared at him, terrified. The voice continued, calm and composed. "I do not seek revenge. I seek accountability. My family believes in discipline, in respect, in peace. But let it be known no one harms my child without answering for it." Then, after a pause that seemed to last forever, the intercom clicked off. A moment later, the sound of footsteps echoed in the hallway. Heavy, deliberate, Aaliyah stood from her seat. She already knew. The classroom door opened, and her father walked in. Black suit, gold ring, presence like a thunderstorm in human form. He smiled faintly when he saw her. "Aaliyah." She walked to him calm and poised while the rest of the class sat frozen. "Ready to go home?" he asked. She nodded. Marcus tried to speak, but his voice failed. Don Moore turned to him, expression unreadable. "Young man, I believe you owe my daughter an apology." Marcus's throat tightened. I'm sorry. For what?" "For everything." "I swear I didn't." The Don raised a hand. "No, and you'll remember this day for the rest of your life. Not because of fear, but because of grace." He placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "Use it wisely." Then he turned back to Olea. "Let's go." They walked down the hallway together, father and daughter, side by side, as students parted like waves around them. Outside, the black cars waited. As Aaliyah got in, she looked back at the school. The fear in their eyes didn't make her proud. It made her sad. Her father followed her gaze. "They'll talk," he said quietly. "They always do." She turned to him. "Let them." He smiled. "That's my girl." The door shut. The cars pulled away, and just like that, Jefferson High would never be the same again. The hum of the engines faded as the convoy rolled to a stop outside. Jefferson High. Students pressed their faces to the classroom windows, whispering in disbelief. Teachers froze mid-sentence. 3 black sedans gleamed beneath the gray sky like polished obsidian, rain misting over their hoods. The air changed thicker somehow. Heavier as doors opened in perfect unison. 4 men stepped out first, each one dressed in a tailored black suit. Their movements were slow, deliberate, as though every motion had been planned. Not a word passed between them, but they communicated through glances. Nods, precision born from discipline, and then he appeared. His shoes clicked softly against the pavement, sound sharp against the stillness. He adjusted his cufflinks, straightened his tie, and lifted his gaze toward the school's main doors. The students closest to the entrance instinctively stepped aside. No one told them to. They simply moved, like leaves caught in a subtle wind. Inside. The principal waited near the reception desk, palms damp, heart hammering. He'd received a call 5 minutes earlier from a man who said simply, "He's on his way." Now, seeing the man in person, Langford understood why everyone spoke of Marcus Moore with a mixture of awe and fear. His presence wasn't loud. It was quiet power, the kind that didn't need to shout "Mr. Moore," Langford stammered. I wasn't expecting." The Don smiled politely. "No one ever does, Mr. Langford." Langford's throat went dry. "Please, come in. We can discuss this privately?" "No," Moore said calmly. "We'll speak where it happened." Langford blinked. "The cafeteria?" The Don nodded once. The echo of his footsteps down the hallway was a rhythm all its own, slow, confident, inevitable. Students peeked from classroom doors as he passed. Teachers pretended to busy themselves, but their eyes followed him. Wide with curiosity, Aaliyah walked beside him, silent, composed. She'd never seen him like this before. Not angry, exactly, but focused. His jaw set, his gaze fixed straight ahead. "Are you mad?" she asked softly. He glanced at her. "At you? Never? At them?" He considered that, then shook his head. "I don't waste anger on children who don't know who they are yet." They reached the cafeteria. The doors were closed, but through the small window, students could be seen huddled together, whispering nervously. The Don opened the doors himself, the hinges creaking under the weight of the silence that followed. Every head turned. Conversations died mid-sentence. Marcus sat at the far table with Tessa and Brianna. His fork froze halfway to his mouth. The Don entered first, his suit glinting faintly beneath the fluorescent lights. Behind him, two men took positions by the doorway, silent, statuesque. Aaliyah walked in beside her father, her posture straight, eyes calm. The Don stopped in the center of the cafeteria. He didn't raise his voice, but everyone heard him clearly. "Which one of you?" he asked softly. "Thought it was acceptable to lay a hand on my daughter?" No one answered. The tension was suffocating. He turned slightly, scanning the room. "No volunteers?" Tessa shifted uncomfortably. Marcus swallowed but said nothing. Aaliyah's voice broke the silence. It was them. She didn't point. She didn't need to. Her gaze was enough. The Don's eyes settled on Marcus and his friends. He approached their table slowly, every step measured. Marcus's usual swagger was gone. His legs trembled under the table. The Don stopped in front of him, looking down with an expression that was unreadable. "What's your name, son?" "Marcus," he stammered. "Marcus the Don," repeated thoughtfully. "That's a strong name. My father's name was Marcus too." He leaned forward slightly. "Do you think my father raised his hand to children?" No, sir." "You think he laughed when people were humiliated?" "No, sir." "Then why did you?" Marcus's mouth opened, but no sound came out. The Don straightened, his voice still calm. "You see, strength isn't measured by how loudly you can make others afraid. It's measured by how quietly you can make yourself respected." He looked around the cafeteria, making eye contact with student after student. There are two kinds of power in this world, the kind that destroys and the kind that protects. You children, he said softly, still have a chance to decide which kind you want to wield. Tessa, voice shaking, whispered, "We didn't mean—" He cut her off gently. "You meant to hurt someone smaller than you." "That's enough." He turned back to Marcus. "Stand up." Marcus hesitated, then stood. The Don placed a hand on his shoulder, not hard, but firm. "Tell my daughter you're sorry." "I'm sorry," Marcus muttered. "Look at her when you say it." He did. "Aaliyah, I'm sorry. I was wrong." The Don nodded slowly. "Good. And now you'll learn why men like me value apology more than revenge." He released Marcus and turned to Aaliyah. "Do you forgive him?" She hesitated. The whole room seemed to hold its breath. Then she nodded. "Yes," her father smiled faintly. "Then it's done." The relief that washed over the cafeteria was almost physical. Shoulders relaxed. People exhaled. But the Don wasn't finished. He addressed the room again, his tone quiet but commanding. "Do you know what I do for a living?" No one answered. "I move money, protect families, make sure people stay fed and safe. Some call me a criminal." He smiled slightly. "Others call me a guardian. Truth is, I'm just a man who understands balance." He looked at Marcus, Tessa, and Brianna again. "You see, children, power without discipline is chaos. It starts with laughter at someone's pain and ends with entire worlds burning. That's why my daughter will always be stronger than you be, 'cause she knows when not to fight." The cafeteria stayed utterly still. He continued, softer now, more like a teacher than a threat. "You don't need fear to make people listen to you. You need respect. Fear fades. Respect lasts." Then he turned to Aaliyah. "Do you understand now why I told you to stay calm?" She nodded slowly. "Because control is power." He smiled. "Exactly. Never forget that." The door swung open again. Principal Langford burst in, red-faced and sweating. "Mr. Moore? Sir?" "With all due respect, this is highly irregular." The Don turned, expression still polite. "Irregular, perhaps?" "Necessary. Absolutely. Sir, I can't allow outside parties to intimidate students." Moore's eyes twinkled with amusement. "Intimidation, Mr. Langford, is a matter of intent. My intent was education." He reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope, placing it on a nearby table. That's a donation to Jefferson High. Enough to rebuild your library, upgrade security, and start a scholarship fund. Langford blinked, stunned. That's very generous. Moore nodded. Consider it payment for peace. But let me make one thing clear. If my daughter is ever harmed again under your supervision, the next thing I rebuild will be this entire institution. Gosh. Langford nodded so fast it almost looked painful. Yes, sir. Absolutely, sir. The Don smiled faintly. Good man. He turned back to the students. Let today be a memory, he said. Not of fear, but of choice. You can grow up to be leaders, protectors, creators, or you can become ghosts, feared but forgotten. His gaze swept over Marcus one last time. The path you choose will follow you for the rest of your life. Marcus nodded mutely. Yes, sir. The Don took Alia's hand. Let's go, sweetheart. As they walked toward the door, someone in the back of the room called out, Mr. Moore. He stopped. It was Jordan, the boy who'd once stood up for Alia in the hallway. Sir, Jordan said nervously, I just wanted to say, thank you. For standing up for her? The Don smiled warmly. Thank you, young man, for doing it first. And then he left. Rain began to fall as they stepped outside. The men opened umbrellas, shielding father and daughter as they walked to the car. Alia looked up at her father. You didn't hurt them. He shook his head. I didn't need to. Fear makes people obey, but guilt makes them change. She nodded thoughtfully. You were right. Power isn't about making them afraid. He smiled proudly. No, baby girl. Power is what you do when you have every reason to destroy someone and you choose not to. As they reached the car, he paused and looked back at the school. Through the cafeteria windows, he could see faces still pressed against the glass watching him. Whispering, remembering. Do you think they'll stop bullying? Alia asked. He chuckled softly. For a while, then the world will test them again. It always does. But maybe this time they'll remember your face before they act. She smiled faintly. And if they don't, then, he said, opening the car door for her, they'll remember mine. They climbed into the car, and the door closed with a muted thud. The convoy pulled away, tires slicing through puddles, engines humming low and steady. By the time Monday came, Jefferson High felt like a different school. The laughter that once echoed cruelly through the halls had turned quieter, more respectful. Students nodded politely at Alia when she passed. Some whispered sorry under their breath. Marcus kept his head down. Tessa had transferred schools within a week. Brianna started volunteering at the library. Even Principal Langford seemed transformed, stricter with bullies, fairer with the quiet kids. He called Alia into his office one afternoon and said, Your father. He's an extraordinary man. She smiled softly. He's just a dad who keeps his promises. Langford nodded. Still, I think you've changed this place more than he did. When she left his office, she found Jordan waiting by the lockers. Hey, he said shyly. You good? Better, she replied. They walked down the hall together. Sunlight breaking through the clouds outside. That night at home, Alia found her father sitting in his office. The rain had stopped, and moonlight spilled through the window. He looked up from his desk as she entered. Busy? She asked. Always, he said with a chuckle. But for you? Never too busy. She hesitated. Did you really have to go to the school yourself? He leaned back in his chair. Sometimes people need to see where lines are drawn. But that wasn't the point. Then what was? He smiled. To teach you that control isn't silence, it's power restrained by purpose. You could have told me what was happening weeks ago. I didn't want to make things worse. He nodded. And you didn't. You gave them a chance to show who they were. That's maturity. She stepped closer. So what now? Now, he said softly. You live, learn, lead. The world will always have bullies, Alia. But it will also have people like you. She smiled. And people like you, laughed quietly. Let's hope you never have to be like me. She tilted her head. But what if I already am? He looked at her for a long moment, then smiled with pride. Then the world's in better hands than I thought. The house grew quiet again. Outside, thunder rolled distantly, a reminder that storms come and go but strength endures. And somewhere in the city, the name Aaliyah Moore began to spread, not as a victim, but as a symbol, because everyone at Jefferson High now knew one unshakable truth. You never truly understand power until you see it choose mercy. The days that followed were quieter than Aaliyah had ever known. Jefferson High, once loud with gossip and laughter at someone's expense, had changed. Something in the air was different. Not fear, not really, but awareness. Every glance that met hers in the hall carried something new. Respect. It started small. When she dropped her pencil in class, a student who once ignored her bent down and picked it up without a word. When she passed through the cafeteria line, the lunch lady who used to look right past her gave her an extra cookie and whispered, "You hold your head up, sweetheart," even Marcus. The boy who had once thought cruelty was strength seemed to carry a different weight in his eyes. He didn't laugh as much anymore. His once perfect posture now sagged with humility. And when he finally approached her again, it wasn't with the swagger he used to wear like armor. It was Friday afternoon, a week after the day. The bell had just rung, and the hallway was a blur of backpacks and chatter. Aaliyah was closing her locker when she saw Marcus standing a few feet away. Shifting his weight from one foot to the other, he looked nervous, not the kind that came before a joke or a fight, the kind that came before a confession. "Hey," he said softly. Aaliyah looked at him, quiet but attentive. "Hey." He rubbed the back of his neck. "Can we talk?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Sure." They stepped outside, to the quiet side of the school, where the old basketball court sat cracked and faded. Autumn leaves rustled across the pavement, the wind cool but gentle. Marcus took a deep breath. "I've been thinking a lot about that day." Aaliyah said nothing. He looked down. "When your dad came in, I thought he was going to destroy me. I mean, everyone did. But he didn't. He just looked at me, and I swear that felt worse than any punch." Leah's eyes softened slightly. "Why'd you do it, Marcus?" He sighed. "'Cause it was easy. 'Cause everyone else laughed. 'Cause I thought if I kept someone else under me, I'd never be the one getting laughed at." There was silence between them, the kind that feels like truth settling in. He finally met her gaze. "I'm sorry, Aaliyah, for everything. Not just for the cafeteria. For every time I made you feel like you didn't belong." She studied him for a moment. His posture, his tone. It wasn't an act. It was real. "I forgave you that day," she said softly. "But hearing you say it, that means something." He nodded, relief washing over him. "Your dad, he's scary, you know that?" Aaliyah smiled faintly. "He's a lot of things. But he said something that's been stuck in my head. About power. About respect." She tilted her head. "And what did you learn?" "That I was weak." Paused, then added, "But I don't want to stay that way." For the first time, Aaliyah saw the boy behind the bravado, the scared, searching part of him that no one else had bothered to see. "Then don't," she said. "You get to choose who you are now." Marcus smiled, just barely. "Guess we both do."